Where has all the color gone? It's been creeping up on me for a few years, and it's finally so in your face I can't ignore it anymore. Everything is beige. Or greige. It's beige. And I mean, that's kind of rich coming from a person who's dressed in black and gray and isn't wearing any makeup to conceal her tragically pale pallor. But I grew up in the 1980s when color was just absolutely everywhere. My brother wore bright pink chip and pepper t-shirts. Kids wore neon ankle socks to school. Swatch was in. I couldn't afford one. The decade was just loud and riotous and colorful to the point where, for comfort, I gravitated to black whenever I could sneak it into my wardrobe. It wasn't easy. I've mentioned before that my mom was a color consultant in the 80s, and I'm a summer, so she spent an inordinate amount of time making sure I couldn't get my hands on my favorite neutral. I guess she figured that her already pale kid shouldn't aspire to resemble a bona fide member of the Addams family. Too late. But the current crop of monocolor has been creeping up on me. And I'm such a contrary-wise creature, I'm rebelling the only way I know how. With color. Today, I'm making a pair of mauve/lavender corduroy overalls and a cute summery top in a soft banana yellow. Purple and yellow are complementary colors, and these soft pastel hues are going to look absolutely awesome on me. Despite the amount of times I pointedly ignored my mother for pointing this out. Not only that, but the overalls and the top, when worn independent of each other, should really pop against some of my favorite neutrals. So let's start cutting out some fabric. We're going to start at the top with the top. The patterns I'm using are Twig and Tail's Breeze shirt from their Women's Curve series, and the ruby overalls from Helen's Closet. Quick aside while we're cutting out fabric and getting started, I had to do a full bust adjustment because the top didn't look like it had as much ease as it claimed it would, and I wanted to err on the side of caution. If you're similarly endowed with huge tracts of land, Twig and Tail have detailed instructions for the FBA on their website. They also mention you can add a bit more room in the tummy while you're at it, so I did. I also did some adjusting to the overalls pattern because last year when I made the Lockhart jumpsuit, I found that the rise was far too short, so some adjustments were made to lengthen the rise. I'm not going to give you a detailed breakdown of all the construction steps or a tutorial on how to put the patterns together. The instructions that come with the patterns are excellent. Amazingly enough, after years of making videos, I'm still trying to figure out what sort of value I provide for my viewers. I don't see myself as a straight-up pattern reviewer or sewing teacher. I'm definitely not qualified for the latter. I like to think of my channel as a cross between a sewing and crafting vlog and an entertainment channel, but the last couple of videos I made while stalling for time did better than I ever imagined, making me wonder if I should be pivoting to opinion pieces a la Tiffany Ferg. And yes, I mentioned I was stalling. At time of editing, it's been a good month since I started filming this video. There's another video I was filming prior to that, which also got pushed out. What caused the delay? I had a slip and fall accident. I was unloading groceries from the car after a trip to Costco, lost my footing on the bottom porch step, and, long story short, wound up with a broken toe on one side and a bruised leg bone on the other. Plus, all sorts of interesting colors on both legs for the next couple of weeks due to bruises. I'm mostly fine now, but it took me off my feet for a couple of weeks and I'm probably not doing any running or energetic dancing for a while. I taped together a bunch of patterns during that time, including these two. In fact, I ran out of tape and had to order more in. I've since discovered that I hate the shiny plastic tape and much prefer the matte stuff you get from 3M. I'd like to thank my channel members and Patreon supporters because aside from the husbeast, they were the first to know that I'd injured myself. I'm living proof that it doesn't matter whether you're 20-something or 50-something, you can still do some serious damage, so take care of yourselves, folks. I'd also like to thank you for watching, hopefully to the end. If you could boop the like button, that would be fantastic. If you're not subscribed, this might be a good time to do so. Welcome to day 2. Not necessarily in a row. So I have my shirt cut out and the necessary pieces are interfaced. I also cut out a shirt for the husbeast, but you don't get to see that, at least not on him. I only mention it just to let you know I've been busy. My legs and feet were so tired and sore after cutting out 2 shirts the other day that I just had to go upstairs and rest. Cutting out the shirts took it out of me, so I had to spend some time with my leg up on the sofa. As mentioned, the colors I chose are comparatively brighter than I usually wear. I had the thought in my head right from the beginning that I could make the video's theme a statement against the sad beige world we seem to be living in. I recently realized I don't have a lot of light-colored shirts that fit, or at least fit properly. I have a bunch of tops in my closet, mostly commercial, that don't work for one reason or another, too tight in some places, too loose in others, and a few hinge on having a bra I can't locate. And the willingness to show my arms, which, let's be honest, I'm not really comfortable with. I don't know a lot of larger women who are all that comfortable showing off their arms. Seriously, what's with women's plus-size stores avoiding sleeves during the summer? It's not like they're charging us any less for the savings in fabric. Rather than just look at those unused tops in my closet all summer while I wore out my old black t-shirts, which had been steadily shrinking with each wash, I'd hoped to make new tops, both knit and woven, to take me through summer to fall. Well, there we go. Shirts drawn first blood. Making a lighter colored top seemed a great idea. I hobbled over to Fabricland. They've been trying to get rid of their spring stock and at the time had a huge sale going on. I came home with the most unlikely combination, yellow and purple. Hey, I went to art college, this'll work. Trust me. It's just rather bright for me. I usually stick to black and other dark neutrals, though having a YouTube channel has opened me up to using more color, since most cameras suck at filming black fabric. It's like they sense the existential void in the soul of every middle-aged 80s goth. Guess what time of year it is, folks? Yep. It's sitting on the toilet. Day 3, and this is where I left off last night with the sleeves. Getting the sleeve tab put on, and I am inordinately pleased with this, like stupidly pleased with this, because at some point I had to adjust the tension on the faff. And I managed to adjust it properly, so the back side of the stitching, because the top stitching is actually on the inside of the blouse, the back side looks almost as good as the inside. Hello, cats! Almost as good as the inside. So I'm happy with that. I can live with that. And provided I don't mess up Provided I don't mess up cutting open the buttonholes, which I did on my Kenmore, because the Kenmore does buttonholes better, and at some point, maybe not this video, but at some point I will go into that, because my mother wondered why I kept the Kenmore. That is one of the reasons why I kept the Kenmore. The buttonholes are absolutely divine. It does fantastic button. But at any rate, today's plan: get the sleeves into the shirt, get the shirt seamed up and hemmed, and hopefully have enough time to get the overalls cut out. And if that's the case, then it'll be a good day. Here's hoping. Okay, come on in here. This drove me nuts. The sleeve cap is just a little too big between the two notches. So the top of the sleeve where the seam is and the notch. I don't know whether you can see it, but what I did was went in there with a little bit of thread and did some mini gathers in that area. So now that fits, and the sleeve will fit all the way from start to end. So now I can go and seam that up. Quite a long time ago now, I came across a parody reel on Instagram about Werner Herzog's sad beige clothes for sad beige children, complete with spontaneous umlauts over various random vowels. Spontaneous Umlaut is my 1970s Swedish pop cover band, by the way. I thought the video was one of the funniest things I'd seen until I realized just how invasive beige was getting. The walls in my old house? Beige. They're beige here too. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Going through Instagram to take a look at indie patterns to try? Many of the influencers are leaning into light neutral browns to show something's expensive, classy, and humble. Beige. Apparently it's the minimalist limited color palette of influencers like Kim Kardashian and Meghan Markle, who as far as I'm aware are not superheroines despite their first and last names starting with the same letters. Missed opportunity for Marvel, I guess. I've seen people turn their books the wrong way on purpose because they want to display the beige pages and hide the color of the cover. I saw a video from a lifestyle influencer disguised as a booktuber do this, and 18-year-old me who worked for a semester in the school library just wanted to scream. How do you find something if you can't see the spine of the book? Granted, I'm a bit of a failure on the whole home librarian front. I have a hard enough time keeping books together by general subject, let alone author or the Dewey Decimal System. Sometimes they even have a hard time making it to a shelf and just hang out on the buffet for months. From what I've been able to glean from browsing the web and accidentally stumbling over videos adjacent to the subject, beige is part of the whole previously mentioned minimalism trend that's been really popular. It's like we made a hard turn at cottagecore when it no longer served our purpose and was adopted by the ultra-conservative. That and the clutter that built up in our homes during the pandemic quarantines, it's like a whole bunch of folks decided to get rid of everything and make sure anything that remained matched, mostly by imposing an exceptionally neutral color palette. I kinda get it. Beige is warm. It can apparently be very soothing and calming and anesthetic. You know what the Pantone color of the year is? Mocha Mousse. A warm brown just a few shades darker than our perennial favorite, beige. In fact, the first sample color palette they show based around the color of the year is basically a series of shades of beige. Later they start to show how it works with color, but it's pretty telling the primary limited palette is beige-centric. So for me, the sad beige meme is a run-on joke. I bought beige dice on 2 occasions, one set of D&D dice and a set of 6-siders for everything else. I call them my sad beige dice for sad beige gamers, and I joked at the time about foisting them off on guests because if you forget your dice, you must be sad. However, I like the jokes so much I use them myself. Maybe the joke's on me. They say everything is cyclical, and I've been seeing that a lot lately. We've had a whole sort of 80s flashback going on to one degree or another for a while, what with Stranger Things, which concludes this winter, and the movie remake of Stephen King's book and subsequent miniseries, It. Personally, I'm a fan of watching Tim Curry chewing the scenery in the 1990s version. Politically speaking, things are trending conservative, much like the 80s. Back then it was Reagan and Thatcher, and for Canadians like me, Brian the Chin Mulrooney. Whether it was in reaction to the cultural stuffiness gripping the world or something else, my memories of the 1980s are different. In addition to the brightly colored chip and pepper t-shirts, ankle socks, and Swatch watches mentioned earlier, there's also the bright squiggles and geometric shapes of artist Keith Haring, and graphic design based on the Memphis Group. So to say I'm waiting for the latest version of the New Romantics is an understatement. Maybe that's where Chapel Roan and the medieval core trend that's been bubbling away just under the surface of Edwardian chic comes in. Either way, I'm looking forward to finding out what comes next. Let's go over the things I usually look at when I make clothing. Did I have any issues or any particular notes about either pattern? Does it look like I expected? Most importantly, do I like it? I worried about the fit in the hips because I made another Helen's Closet garment recently and found it way too tight in the hip. I'm now thinking that's probably something to do with the garment itself rather than the usual drafting from Helen's Closet. You hear more about it when I get the video edited together, and I'll leave a link somewhere up there or it'll be on the end screen, just when it's done. I had decided to leave some extra fabric at the hips, then accidentally cut away that extra fabric when I was cutting out the last piece, and then I realized that the extra fabric I'd left on the others was a little low down on the hip. I cut it away when I installed the pockets. I did try to get a little extra wiggle room by skimping my seam allowance on the pockets and hip area, so that appears to have done the trick. Bit of a calculated risk on my part. I was surprised how little fabric I had left over. Usually I'm able to squeak everything together so I have some extra in case I need to fix something, and I didn't have all that much. That's possibly going to bite me in the arse because I do have some repairs that I have to do. As it was, I went with the pockets that came standard with the pattern instead of my usual huge enormous pockets, or a pair that I've reworked to be more compatible with my Helen's Closet patterns. I can feel the difference. Putting anything in my hip pockets feels a little bit crowded, and I did use some of my scrap to make the chest pocket and hide some of the seam on the front bib. So that's where my cell phone goes when my car keys are in the other pockets. I made the view with the sewn-in straps, and when I put the overalls on the first couple of times, I was pretty sure I heard something rip, but I couldn't find anything that had popped. I decided to wear them on a trip to IKEA. Good old IKEA. And the husbeast noted that the seam around one of the straps had ripped, and apparently I hadn't left enough strapping to catch in the top stitching. So I'll probably be doing a little judicious seam ripping and making some repairs. We'll see if I can get a new complete set of straps out of the scraps or if I have to piece them. Either way, I've since picked up the hardware that's usually used on overall straps, and I'll be installing them to make getting into and out of this thing a lot easier. I may also need to adjust the elastic to be a bit tighter in the waist because it felt a bit like the overalls were trying to edge downward, kind of heavyish feeling, and that could just be another symptom of the straps needing work or, the heaviness of the fabric. I was really glad that the overalls fit through the rise because that was a concern after my experience with the Lockhart jumpsuit last summer. My alterations seem to have done the trick though, which makes me really happy. The shirt, probably shouldn't have used interfacing. I do have some sensory issues around my neck, and the tunic slit neckline wants to just stay closed when I'd like the edges to flop to the sides the way that my March dress does. So I'm using a couple of safety pins to keep them in place. I'll remove them when I have to wash the shirt, but until then they do a fine job. I might just get out a needle and some thread and tack them down permanently. I'm not sure that I like the collar either, so if and when I make this top again, I'll probably just leave off the collar and the interfacing, maybe bind the top edge like I did with the March dress or make it a subtle V-neck. The fit is great. It's a bit oversized. There's lots of room in the chest. I'm used to bust-adjusted garments being just a bit more snug, but this is really nice, quite comfortable. It's longer than I thought that it would be, so I had adjusted for height, but now I'm thinking I might not need to do that in the future with twig and tail shirts. I may just have another pattern taped together that I might need to remove the added length from. It's bright, and that's exactly what I was looking for. The combination is fantastic. I can also see myself mixing and matching with some of the other things I usually wear and am making this summer, so that's absolutely brilliant. Considering I trend to neutrals or neutral colors like black, gray, neutral dark browns, or navy, the pop of color from these pieces is absolutely wonderful. It looks pretty much like I envisioned. Do I like it? Well, I can see where there needs to be some improvement and some things I'll need to get used to, but on the whole, yeah, I like it. I'm glad I went for the full leg instead of shorts or mid-calf pant legs. I wore these out on one of the hottest days this year so far, and I didn't have a lot of trouble. Of course, it's been years since I've worn corduroy, so getting into and out of the car was an experience. We have fabric seats rather than leather, and corduroy plus car upholstery is something else. It might have been a different experience if I'd remembered that corduroy has a directional nap, because I accidentally cut my pieces out upside down. And I'm probably the only person who's ever going to notice this, and I find it funny rather than frustrating. They're definitely a pair of overalls made by me. I also like the shirt. Again, I wore it on a hot day and it was wonderful. It was great. Getting used to the shirt tucked into any sort of pant is different, but wearing it loose is really comfortable. I'd cut the little tab out to put the elastic in the back and then decided against it. I might just go back and do that just to give it a little extra shape, but otherwise, with the neckline pinned open, it's almost as comfy as a t-shirt. The next version will probably be that much better. Definitely twig and tail patterns are great for folks with sensory issues, mostly due to the French seams. Nobody could have predicted my issues with necklines, so that one's on me. Next time I'll make the alterations to minimize that particular problem, and the shirt will be practically perfect. I am having to get used to wearing brighter colors. I have a couple of bright pink and red t-shirts that have made a reappearance lately, and I'm forcing myself away from just reaching for the same style black t-shirt every day. I've even started whipping out my little swatch wallet of colors Mom gave me when I'm in the fabric store, so baby steps. It's funny because for every article you find that says the sad beige trend is over, you find a bunch more by new parents and young people that proudly proclaim the trend toward color is wrong, and they're not just happy to remain sad beige people, they're proud of it. And you know what? You do you. My mother's no longer on this earth to force me to wear ice cream colors guaranteed to flatter my complexion. So instead, I'm doing it myself. I can choose color, or I can choose neutrals. And on the rare occasion, I may even choose beige.